Right now in Canada, there are two federal conservative parties. The Progressive Conservatives, Mark Carney's Liberals, and the Maple MAGA fascist ones under PP.
My message to him today is conservatives are here to work with the Prime Minister.
They have some differences in how they do things, but what's shared is their conservative values and their conservative agenda, where the two conservative federal parties agree, and just how devastating that is to the average Canadian. What is the conservative agenda? What do they agree on? Hint, it's a dog shit ideology with no greater vision outside of infinite short-term profit seeking and destroying the planet. The conservative parties want to conserve. They want to conserve their existing power and the existing distribution of resources and wealth. They want the capital-owning class to become more powerful. The conservative parties aren't conserving anything outside of the existing power structure that sees them at the top. These are rich, ruling class elite designing a society to continue their violent system under capitalism. So the federal liberal and conservative parties have been getting really lovey-dovey. Both the parties are run by the ruling class for the ruling class. What are Mark Carney and PP going to do? Please like and subscribe if you enjoy my content and want to see more on American integration and foreign policy. The conservative agenda calls for a concerning level of militarization that we've not seen since World War II in Canada. Carney has said he plans on quadrupling Canada's military budget, spending up to 5% of Canada's annual GDP on defense spending. This was a Donald Trump request that Carney gave without any concessions. The art of the deal. This is an ungodly amount to spend on a military in a time of peace. Spending on militarization while the masses suffer throughout the many crises going on in Canada and the conservative platform of austerity for the masses. And this money's being spent on a NATO-style military. A style of military that is designed specifically to support American empire.
Almost every one of them said, thank God for the United States. Without the United States, they couldn't really have NATO. It wouldn't work.
Investing in Canada's NATO-style military does not protect Canadians from the real enemy, which is the fascist empire south of the border where we share the longest undefended border in the history of the planet. This type of spending does not protect Canada. Actually, it further integrates the Canadian military with the American empire's military. This is part of the conservative platform. Rampant military industrial complex, profiteering off of war and violence, supporting America's dying empire. A notion that I think most Canadians despise because they correctly assess that America is the #1 threat to Canada right now. I don't think Carney and PP got the notice of that though. They're still going on about Russia, China, Iran.
We need to crack down on foreign interference, threats, and intimidation of our people from hostile powers like China, Russia, and Iran.
Iran has expressed a desire to eliminate the state of Israel, where the state of Iran has been a sponsor of terrorism, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and beyond.
Carney and PP both want Canada deeply integrated with the fascist-led imperialist alliance that we call NATO. NATO is America's protection racket. Just like Donald Trump says, Canada exists because the United States allows it to, which is true. That's what a protection racket is. Related to that point, Mark Carney's last stated position was to support Donald Trump's Golden Dome initiative, or as Canada's CEO likes to call it, hypersonic missile defense.
There are certain areas where we will want to be integrated and continue to fully cooperate with the United States. I would suggest, some others have a different view, but hypersonic missile defense is one of those areas where we're going to want to do. We have those discussions with
Trump's Golden Dome would see further military integration with the American empire and would see fascist military installations across the country.
We're building a Golden Dome that's going to, just by its very nature, going to be defending Canada. Canada gets a lot of freebies from us, by the way. They should be grateful also, but they're not. I watched your Prime Minister yesterday. He wasn't so grateful. But they should be grateful to us. Canada.
Both conservative parties love the idea of more military integration with the American empire. Conservative parties like to pretend that military integration with America is somehow protecting Canada from its enemies. They've got this fucking backwards, and they know it. They just don't care. They want to be attached to the fascist-led military alliance. Any rational Canadian hears the idea of the Golden Dome as a stupid idea. But the rich banker guy says, it's a great idea, people.
We will want to be integrated and continue to fully cooperate with the United States.
What a fucking loser. These guys aren't smarter than us. They're just evil. More on foreign policy. Conservative parties are both hawkish towards China. Both identify China as an enemy and how they cannot be trusted.
And then the question is, how deep is the relationship? And how clear are the guardrails around that relationship? And there are areas, artificial intelligence, critical minerals, defense, where clearly the security threats are such that we would not have a deep relationship with China in those areas.
Look, China's the number 2 superpower on the planet right now, and America's only going downwards with the crazy fascist Donald Trump at the top. And China behaves like a rational, stable actor who you can actually trust to fulfill their word. Instead of collaborating with China, the conservative parties agree that they are enemies and cannot be trusted in specific areas like defense.
To aggressive powers like the People's Republic of China, which the Prime Minister himself called our greatest threat only a few months ago.
Carney and PP and the Conservative parties broadly agree that Canada must continue its alliance and material support to the fascist state of Israel. Israel, who is still committing a live stream for more than 2 years now.
Israel must be able to prevent Iran from using nuclear weapons if necessary. That means proactively striking Iranian nuclear sites.
I suspect that a majority of liberals and conservatives will vote no against Jenny Kwan's No More Loopholes Act, which would close the American loophole that allows Canadian arms manufacturers to send shit to Israel to support them in their apartheid and of Palestinians. That's what they're conserving. On a similar note, conservative agenda also calls for the further repression of pro-Palestine and indigenous protesters, people who are standing up for the right thing. The conservative parties will continue to be an ally with Israel, listening to their lobbyists and parroting their racist narratives.
To thank the National Holocaust Committee, CIJA, the Jewish Federation of Ottawa, B'nai B'rith, the Israeli and Swedish embassies for organizing this important event.
In Carney's 2025 budget, there was $300 million allocated to building Canadian military capabilities in the Middle East.
And as I speak to you today, Canadian troops are participating in NATO deterrence and defense missions across Central and Eastern Europe, as well as building capacity in the Middle East.
Now, folks, Canada is not in the Middle East. These capabilities are self-evidently to support Israel and America's interest in the region. I think both conservative parties are on board with that. Square that with them trying to pretend like investing in this type of military is defending against America. It just doesn't make sense. The conservative parties agree to continue to support Canada's alliance with America and Israel. Conservative agenda for the Canadian economy. The conservative parties agree. They agree on austerity and sacrifices for the masses.
All will require ambition, collaboration, and yes, on occasion, sacrifice.
While giving corporations and the wealthiest Canadians massive handouts and tax cuts. They lowered the capital gains tax increase. They dropped the digital services tax, which was a tax on giant American tech companies. And I'll also recall that Carney dropped the consumer carbon tax at PP's request, which overwhelmingly net benefited the wealthiest Canadians. Just to sprinkle on top of that, Carney also, in his 2025 budget, got rid of the luxury goods tax, which saw an extra tax on shit like private jets and yachts, stuff that everyday Canadians will never touch. He's dropping that tax. There is no other reason other than just to give a little handout to his ruling class buddies. Carney will continue his policy of austerity and sacrifices, cuts to federal programs that Canadians rely on every day. Carney has already cut 16,000 federal jobs in 1 year alone. Cutting 16,000 jobs during an unemployment crisis is what we call stupid, and Carney intends to fire tens of thousands more. Thousands of families who will have their lives upended and futures thrown into disarray. Their economic policies will also include stuff like trampling down on workers' rights, like using Section 107 of the Labor Code, and depriving First Nations and Indigenous peoples of their right to free, prior, and informed consent to projects on their territory. And what will the average Canadian see from the Conservative fiscal policy? Nothing. Material conditions will continue to degrade under this fiscal policy. Piss down trickle economics doesn't work. I can't believe we're still having this conversation, but that's what the federal Conservative parties are advocating for. More tax cuts for the rich and corporations, and sacrificing working class Canadians. The Conservative agenda on climate change. Canada will not meet its greenhouse gas emissions targets. A failure. The Conservatives are hell-bent on making it even worse. It feels like half the country is on fire for half the year, displacing thousands, ruining lives, destroying homes, wildfire smoke that affects pretty much every Canadian. They're looking to make it worse, all for some quick bucks. Carney's Liberals and the Conservative parties broadly have and will continue to support policies that accelerate and worsen climate change. Their policies will make climate disasters stronger, more frequent, and deadlier. Carney and PP align a lot here. Conservative agenda is to push for more pipelines, like Mark Carney's Memoranda of Understanding with the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith. The MOU which set up the conditions to build another pipeline, a bitumen pipeline to the West Coast.
And specifically within energy, opportunities, yes, for an oil pipeline to get to Tidewater.
Because apparently what Canada needs is technology of the past, another metal tube, vulnerable, hundreds of kilometers long, thick, oozing tar sands in it the whole length. I see nothing wrong with this. This is the type of policy that the Conservative agenda wants. They want technology of the past to preserve and chase profits now.
Then we can negotiate from a position of strength. For example, we need to rapidly approve a pipeline to the Pacific. That means not announcements or meaningless memorandums, but a permit to get it in the ground.
Conservative parties operate on a stupid idea of more oil, more good.
Now, we must approve pipelines.
Both parties are big fans of oil sands and their lobbyists. Carney's a big proponent of the Pathways Alliance, which is just the biggest Canadian oil companies getting together to lobby politicians. He's a big fan of that. The Maple MAGA front is the same. Neither Conservative party has a credible policy approach to climate change and reaching Canada's net zero goals, or to defend against increasingly frequent and damaging climate-induced disasters. The Conservative plan is to say, fuck you to the masses, I got my own, and watch as the world burns, to make the line go up, to keep the capital-owning class happy. More oil, more good is the Conservative agenda. Mark Carney and the Conservative parties want more fossil fuel extraction, and other policies that he's done is like cutting the consumer carbon tax, approving new fossil fuel extraction projects, and recently Carney dropped the EV sales mandate, which would have required all cars sold in Canada to be EVs by 2035. He did this to help out the American auto industry.
Our objective is to remove all tariffs in the auto sector, to build the strongest North American auto sector. That's what we will build together.
and to gently push back Canada's climate targets. Conservatism means conserving the internal combustion engine and the oil that feeds it. It's a stupid ideology. Canada's two federal conservative parties have a shared agenda: capitalist status quo with complete submission to the fascist Donald Trump. And the reason is Carney and PP both don't want to rock the boat. Don't fuck with the bag. PP and Carney represent and advocate for the capital owning class while giving the masses the fewest resources possible. The conservative agenda includes rampant militarization and further economic and military integration with the dying American empire while the world burns. It's a gross, anti-human agenda that should be ridiculed for the stupid policy that it is. I did not cover every single shared policy and conservative agenda items. The list is too long because they have so much in common. One of them just wants to do it a lot more brazenly and fascistly. There's so much more shared policies. They are ready and willing to work together to get their stupid ass policies made into laws in Canada. The underlying problem with the conservative agenda is that it's trying to conserve the system that has brought us to where we are today. It's trying to conserve NATO. It's trying to conserve capitalism. It's trying to conserve austerity. It's trying to conserve Canada's alliance with Israel. It's trying to conserve hawkishness on China. It's honestly quite shocking how quickly the Overton window shifted rightwards. We went from a center-left Trudeau government working with the NDP to progressive conservative party who is cooperating with the maple MAGA fascist conservatives. We need to take fascism seriously, and our two main conservative parties aren't doing that. They're collaborating, working alongside, just don't rock the boat. This is the exact same mistakes that conservative and liberal parties of the past made. It's appeasement to fascism. Those are my thoughts on the conservative agenda shared between our two conservative parties. Peace and love. Until next time, take care. Free Palestine. Mark Carney, PP, Donald Trump. Bye-bye.